What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock NBA, and today we are here for another installment of rock and metal covers that sucked, or sometimes that didn't. Including a few brilliant ones that stood the test of time, a few terrible ones that definitely didn't, and a few examples of those bands that had some success with a big hit cover song, but were unfortunately never able to turn that into a successful career of their own. So today we'll be looking at a few bands including A Day to Remember, Five Finger Death Punch, Rage Against the Machine, and more, and asking the question, did the cover hold up? Did it stand the test of time? Or did it suck? And also, I'd like to thank Keeps for sponsoring this video. Keeps is a subscription service that helps men keep their hair. It may be too late for me, but it doesn't have to be too late for you. Look, the reality is that 2/3 of guys experience some kind of hair loss before the age of 35. That is actually right about when it started to hit me. And Keeps offers clinically proven, research-backed treatments to stop hair loss and improve hair growth delivered straight to your door. It's so much easier with Keeps. You don't have to go to a doctor or a pharmacy, but you're still getting a doctor recommended plan at about half the cost of a traditional pharmacy. And the best part is that you'll still have 24/7 care and support. Every plan comes with a year of unlimited messaging where you can connect with your prescribing doctor about anything, anytime. Whether you want to prevent hair loss, stimulate hair growth, or just take better care of your hair, Keeps is for you. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get a special offer on Keeps treatments, just go to keeps.com/punkrock or click the link in the description. That's keeps.com/punkrock. First up, we have Behind Blue Eyes by Limp Bizkit, originally by The Who.
No one knows what it's like to be the bad man.
And to be honest, I'm not really sure what the original is about, but the Limp Bizkit version is that song that every metal band seems to make at some point in their career about how hard life on the road is. And you don't know what it's like to be in my shoes, man. This rock and roll life isn't all glitz and glamour, which is true. Life on the road is really difficult, but still, I just think it's kind of funny that like every band seems to make one of these songs, or at least did back then. And I actually only recently discovered that turns out people really hate this cover. Personally, I do think it's kind of a boring song to begin with, but I really don't see what's so bad about Limp Bizkit's version. Maybe it's just like boomer rage at a new metal band covering one of their favorite classic rock artists. I don't know. And although this song wasn't really a big hit in America, it was actually like a top 10 or 20 hit in something like 10 European countries. So obviously someone liked it. And it's not something that I personally would choose to listen to, but I really don't think it's nearly as bad as people seem to think. So does it hold up? I don't know. I'm 50-50 on that. And next, Bad Company by Five Finger Death Punch, which is a cover of the band Bad Company's song by the same name from 1974.
And that's why they call me Bad Company.
Although this is one of those cases where they really kind of turned it into their own song, and I think a lot of people don't even know that this is a cover. And I'm not personally a huge fan of this song. It's a little too like slow and boring for me, but there is no denying that this was a huge song for them. This is from their second album, and I think in a lot of ways it's kind of really the song that turned them into the band that they are now, because they really kind of did put their own spin on it. The original, from what I can tell, is about being like a badass cowboy or something, but Five Finger Death Punch turned it into a tribute to the American military and being a soldier. And I'm definitely a pro-military guy in general, but I gotta say, I do find this video a little bit cringe. Just the way that they totally pander to that crowd is a little bit embarrassing, when you can tell that in a lot of ways it's sort of not really who they are. Like the part where Jason is like awkwardly drilling to clear a hallway, and you can tell like he doesn't really know how to hold a rifle. But still, I do think it's cool that they played so many shows to deployed troops over in the Middle East. And although their military pandering can be a little bit much, if I had to choose, it is definitely a nice change of pace from all the bands out there who spend most of their time bashing the military as they enjoy the freedom of speech that they have because of the military that they're bashing. But in any case, I don't know if this is like a calculated move on their part or not, but either way, since then, that's become a really big part of their fan fan base. Like, to this day, they have a huge contingent of military and law enforcement people who just absolutely love the band. So with all of that being said, I would have to say I do think this cover holds up. And next up, something that maybe did not age quite so well. Vanilla Ice, I guess, covering himself with the new metal version of Ice Ice Baby.
Stop, collaborate and listen. Ice is back, I got a brand new invention. Something grabs a hold of me tightly.
And if you're not familiar with it, this is from his 1998 nu metal album called Hard to Swallow, which, let's be real, is terrible. There's no two ways about it. And I kind of love how he gave himself like this overnight nu metal makeover. He started wearing Adidas and grew out these little dreads and wore the black fly sunglasses, almost like he was some forgotten member of Korn. He even got Ross Robinson to produce the album. Like, he really just checked all the nu metal boxes.
This is me, and this is no image made up or anything. I want to give people me whether they like it or not.
So does this cover hold up? Obviously not. It is terrible. But I have to say, he does seem like a really decent, cool guy, and I kind of love his home improvement show. Yes, that is a thing. It's called The Vanilla Ice Project on HGTV.
Ice is back with a brand new renovation.
Ching ching.
It's kind of great. Very relaxing. And next up, Since You've Been Gone by A Day to Remember, originally by Kelly Clarkson.
Since you've been gone, I can't breathe.
This song came out back in 2008 on the reissue version of their second album, and I think it was kind of their big breakout song during the MySpace years. And remember, this is back when metalcore covers of pop songs was still a relatively new idea, so this felt pretty fresh and interesting. And if you've watched my other videos, you know that I am a huge fan of A Day to Remember, and I also love Kelly Clarkson. But I have to say, I hadn't listened to this song in a few years until I started writing this video, and honestly, it's really not as good as I remember it being. It's certainly not bad by any means, but compared to what the band has done since then, it's clearly not them at their best. They would probably agree with me on that. And so I would say that this one only like kind of sort of holds up. And next up, Blue Monday by Orgy, originally by New Order.
How does it feel to treat me like you do?
And these guys were a bit of a one-hit wonder, with this song being their only one that most people would remember, although they did have a couple other singles that did pretty well, and honestly, I think their first three albums are all pretty good. And personally, as much as I dislike nu metal in general, I think this song is pretty great. Although I do remember quite a few people back then being upset that an awful nu metal band would dare to cover a post-punk classic like this, because, you know, those type of people are pretty much always mad about everything. But honestly, I think the Orgy version is better than the original. The New Order version is obviously a great song, but listening to it now, the production and the performance in general just feels a little bit too dated for me to really be able to enjoy it. To me, the Orgy version is really what that song should have been in the first place. So does this version hold up? I would say it does. Very good cover. And next up, we have The Man Who Sold the World by Nirvana, originally by David Bowie.
Oh no, not me.
And this is from their MTV Unplugged show in 1993, which they ended up releasing as like a full album on its own. And for anybody who wasn't around back then, or maybe was too young to really remember it, that show was really kind of a special moment that was much bigger than just like a TV appearance. It was like a real pop culture moment. And one thing that I really liked about it is that instead of just doing acoustic versions of all their popular songs, which is what most people did on Unplugged, about half of their set on that show was covers of, you know, pretty obscure bands like the Meat Puppets and the Vaselines that really lent themselves to that intimate acoustic format. And for the most part, I'm not really into acoustic songs in general. Like, I just find them kind of low energy and boring most of the time. But even for me, it was obvious that this show was something special. Like, it was almost uncomfortable how raw and intimate it was. Like, even though it was this stripped down acoustic performance, it was almost more intense than their normal shows. And this song in particular, for whatever reason, at least to me, just felt so emotionally heavy that you just couldn't deny it. So does it hold up? Yes, absolutely. I think anybody who says otherwise is just straight up out of their mind. This album is an all-time classic, and I would say this song is maybe the standout track. But one that, let's just say, did not age so well is the Word Alive's cover of Mercy by Kanye West from Punk Goes Pop Volume 5. And the song itself, you know, is mostly fine. It's sort of your typical punk goes pop cover. I would say actually probably one of the better ones in a lot of ways. But what really makes it stand out is that like record skip, wait a minute, like did they really do that kind of moment? Which is the just shockingly bad choice they made to say the N-word 3 times in this song. And I have no idea what they were thinking. You know, this was 10 years ago. I'm not trying to cancel them or whatever. They've removed it from every streaming service. It's only on YouTube now. And I'm sure that they didn't mean anything by it. They were just singing the lyrics of the song they covered. Mostly, I just think it's pretty funny that this even happened at all. And next up, we have I Set My Friends on Fire covering Crank Dat by Soulja Boy.
Soulja Boy, I've been in home. Watch me crank it, watch me roll. Watch me crank that Soulja Boy. That's so bad.
And this one's a pretty interesting example. This came out back in 2007, and it's arguably the very first example of a metalcore band covering a popular rap song, and really the start of that whole trend, which unfortunately is still going strong. And obviously this song was never like mainstream popular, but by the standards of the scene at the time, it was a huge hit. It was getting 50,000 plays a day on MySpace, which back then was huge. You know, for a song back then to get 1 million plays was like, holy shit. It was actually so many plays that the MySpace admins were convinced that the band was using a bot to get fake plays and like bump up their stats. And so they kept deleting the band's profile. So whether you think this is like musically great or not, you can't deny that it was like kind of a big deal for them. It was enough to get them signed to Epitaph, and an example of how good these guys are at getting attention on the internet, which is something that they are still doing to this day 15 years later. And next up, Rage Against the Machine's cover of In My Eyes by Minor Threat. And for anyone who may not be familiar, Minor Threat is one of the very best, greatest hardcore punk bands of all time. And this song is from back in 1981. And as many people know, Zach from Rage Against the Machine is also from the hardcore scene. His old bands Hard Stance and Inside Out are some of the very best late 80s hardcore. Like, check that stuff out if you're into that sort of thing. And I would say that he was probably the single best vocalist in that whole generation of hardcore. Just absolutely incredible. And this cover itself is really a pretty straightforward version. They don't really put like the Rage Against the Machine spin on it, but it did answer the question that I always had of like, hey, what would happen if Rage Against the Machine just played hardcore? How would that sound? And turns out the answer is it would sound pretty fucking good. So I would say, yes, this cover holds up. But on the other hand, a Minor Threat cover that many people did not like quite so much is Slayer's version of the Minor Threat song Guilty of Being White from their album Undisputed Attitude. That was a whole album of punk covers. And what people seem to really not like about it is that they changed the words in the very last chorus from guilty of being white to guilty of being right.
Guilty of being white. Guilty of being right.
And this just did not go over well at all. Brian Baker and Ian MacKaye from Minor Threat both talked about not liking it. Like Ian MacKaye said, that is just so offensive to me. Which I guess I understand, but from the Slayer side of things, it doesn't really seem like they were even really trying to make any kind of particularly strong statement there. They seem to just think it was a funny joke. And I do think it's worth pointing out that Tom Araya and Dave Lombardo are both Hispanic immigrants. They're from Chile and Cuba, respectively. So there is some irony there in like these white American guys telling the Hispanic immigrants what they are and aren't allowed to say. But I get it. I mean, Slayer has definitely never been politically correct. Right? And personally, I think this whole album is fucking great. I think usually metal bands sound terrible covering punk songs because they're like too stiff and they sort of lose the rawness and aggression of punk. But this album is like the perfect combination. It has that rawness and aggression and speed of punk, but with sort of the precision of metal. I think it's a 10 out of 10. I love this album. And last but not least, we have Boys of Summer by the Ataris, originally by Don Henley. And what makes this one work to me is that it really just sounds like an Ataris song. I mean, that's kind of one of the hallmarks of a good cover to me, right? Is that a band makes the song their own, and if you didn't know, you wouldn't even realize that it was a cover. I think part of that is just because Don Henley and Chris Rowe of the Ataris have really similar voices, so it just sort of is a natural fit for them. But the Ataris also made it their own by like changing some of the lyrics. Like the original has that line, "I saw a Deadhead sticker on a Cadillac," sort of reflecting on how their subculture has become just like fodder for boomers. And the Ataris sort of made that same comment about their subculture by changing the line to, "I saw a black flag sticker on a Cadillac." So I think it's a really good song, but this is another one of those unfortunate examples where the band had kind of a breakthrough hit with this song. Like it hit number 20 on Billboard, but they were really never able to follow up that success with one of their originals. Which is too bad because honestly, the Ataris were really, really good. Like one of the most underrated pop punk bands of this era. Definitely check them out if you liked this cover because they are just generally a great band. All right, my friends, that does it for this episode. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. Check me out on Twitch if you haven't. I stream twice a week. There's a link to that in the description of this video. And also, I want to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon, especially those of you who support at the True Cult level or above. Patrons get all my podcasts early. I do Q&As, I do giveaways. And if you want me to review your music, there's a way to do that too. All you need to do is join at the $10 and up level. Every month, I do a call for submissions. If you want me to review something, just drop it in the comments of that post. Then I will review it live on Twitch and post it on Patreon for everyone to see. So if that sounds cool to you, there's a link in the description of this video. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.